Poverty and mental health services for urban children and adolescents. Globally, the majority of the world lives in urban areas. In the U.S., up to 40 million people live in poverty, with 14% of those being children under the age of 18. The majority of those are Black and Latino children who are at higher risk for living in poverty. They're more likely to live in communities with limited resources such as stores, doctors, food, safe shelter. And they're more likely to be in a cycle of generational poverty. If a child is born into poverty, mother is in poverty, at least 3 generations is chronic poverty. And chronic poverty increases the risk for mental illness, which can also be passed from generation to generation. Exposure to continuous environmental stressors increase the risk for chronic and persistent mental illness that exist over a lifetime, as well as cognitive delays that may hinder somebody's ability to learn over a lifetime. Specific challenges in urban mental health resources. Specific to urban areas is bias. The assumption is that people of color, Black and Latino, are more prone to behavior issues. Therefore, intervention programs in schools are typically focused on behavior modification instead of mental health identification and addressing that issue, such as anxiety and PTSD. Even if there were an identification of mental illness, there are few resources within the community, and transportation usually is an issue within an urban area. Entities, other subsystems have to be educated that conduct behaviors may actually be a manifestation of mental illness and not one of choice or defiance. Urban areas are usually several densely packed neighborhoods with everybody living in the same low economic standard, same lack of community resources. And urban areas are usually known for noise, gang violence, high homicide rates, and overall crime rates. Community stresses for those living in urban areas. Internally, single parent households, relationship conflicts. Is there enough of the basics, food, water, safety? Is there abuse? Is there neglect? Outside stressors would include that crime we talked about and violence. Approximately 40% of all children and youth have witnessed at least one shooting, and they realize that it could be them one day because murder is the second leading cause of death for ages 15 to 24. The family systems theory, poverty and mental health. The relationship between poverty in urban areas and mental illness is a cycle. They act upon each other. Poverty increases stress. Violence increases fear and anxiety. Those things are considered mental illness. Those things can affect jobs. If you cannot hold a job due to depression, schizophrenia, whatever, then you are not able to pay your bills and you slip further into poverty. Poverty and mental illness have been shown to affect the tax base. About 45% worldwide economy, 45% of people who suffer from mental illness, the amount of time lost in jobs and wages, it's staggering amount. In families, dropout rates are higher in urban areas, probably because the schools are kind of dilapidated and the children are not really focused upon. There are fewer job opportunities and options within the communities. Crime is a daily thing. So I think poverty and mental health, it is a continuous system. Social support for families, individual family counseling, help identify the primary problems, maybe by using an echo map. You assist clients to recognize and access strengths to their own problem solving. Make a plan, set goals incrementally so that they aren't overwhelmed. Only find out the three biggest problems though, because you don't want to try to tackle too many. Figure out the access to resources that are already in place, like career services, financial counseling, mental health services. Refer to the National Alliance of Mental Illness chapter and local chapter. There are free group meetings and information. Local mental health agency include family, friends, and groups to offer additional support and access the risk of grief and loss, as well as suicidal risk and levels of depression.